A triumph of surgery.
I was really worried about Tricki this time. I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress. I was shocked at his appearance. He had become hugely fat, like a bloated sausage with a leg at each corner. His eyes, bloodshot and rheumy, stared straight ahead and his tongue lolled from his jaws.
He was so listless, Mr. Herriot. He seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, so I have been giving him some malt and cod liver oil in a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep, nothing much really.
And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you?
Oh, I did for a bit, but he seemed to be so weak I had to relent. He does love cream cakes and chocolates.
I looked down again at the little dog. Tricki's only fault was greed. He had never been known to refuse food. Are you giving him plenty of exercise?
Well, he has his little walks with me, but Hodgkin, the gardener, has been down with lumbago, so there has been no ring throwing lately.
Now I really mean this. If you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he is going to be really ill. You must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet.
Oh, I will, Mr. Herriot. I'm sure you are right, but it is so difficult.
She set off, head down, along the road. I thought it wouldn't be long before I heard from Mrs. Pumphrey. The expected call came within a few days. Mrs. Pumphrey was distraught. Tricki would eat nothing. Refused even his favorite dishes. And besides, he had bouts of vomiting. I had made my plans in advance. The only way was to get Tricki out of the house for a period. I suggested that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight to be kept under observation. I marched out to the car carrying the little dog. As I moved off, Mrs. Pumphrey, with a despairing cry. At the surgery, the household dog surged round me. Tricki lay motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing round him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and ignored him. At the end of the second day he started to show some interest in his surroundings. After rolling him over and thoroughly inspecting him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Tricki followed them, rolling slightly with his surplus fat. Later that day, I was present at feeding time. From then on, his progress was rapid. He had no medicinal treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. He discovered the joys of being bowled over, tramped on and squashed every few minutes. All the while, Mrs. Pumphrey hovered anxiously in the background, ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins. But I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convalescing rapidly. The word convalescing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pumphrey. She started to bring round fresh eggs, 24 at a time, to build up Tricki's strength. The bottles of wine began to arrive. It was to enrich Tricki's blood. Lunch became a ceremonial occasion with 2 glasses of wine before and several during the meal. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricki's constitution. For a few nights the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled and reverently drunk. It was a temptation to keep Tricki on as a permanent guest, but I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering and after a fortnight, felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. Within minutes, she came to recollect Tricki. She opened the door. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled.
Oh, Mr. Herriot, do tell me the truth. Is he really better?
Yes, he's fine. There's no need for you to get it, I'll go and fetch him. I walked through the house into the garden. In 2 weeks he had been transformed into a live, hard-muscled animal. I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. When Tricki saw his mistress he sailed into her lap. Tears shone in Mrs. Pumphrey's eyes. Her lips trembled.
Oh, Mr. Herriot, how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery.